Are you guys able to see my screen?
Yes, Miss. Clear, Miss.
Okay, got it. Okay, hi everyone. Good afternoon. My name is Brenda. I am from Bloomberg, based in Singapore office. I am from product and analytics team. So in today's session, I'll cover the macroeconomics and news for Bloomberg Terminal. But to begin with, I will explain about what Bloomberg is, what Bloomberg Terminal is, and just a short introduction about Bloomberg. I want to make this session become more interactive. So if you guys have any questions, feel free to unmute your microphone. Feel free to ask the questions, or if you prefer to type it in the chat, that will do as well. Okay. So for today's agenda, sorry, just give me a moment to share my screen. Okay, so for today's agenda, we'll firstly talk about introduction to Bloomberg. So I'll explain what Bloomberg is, what we do at Bloomberg. And then the second section would be for Bloomberg navigation. So how you can log into Bloomberg Terminal and find a lot of data. And then the third session would be for macroeconomics and news. And then for the second and the third session would be then followed by fixed income analytics and equity analytics. So to begin with the session, I want that everyone actually contribute to the session. So I've made like some quizzes for you guys. So please go to this link and enter this code. Okay, I'll paste it in the chat as well. So just give me a moment to copy and paste the link. Okay, I'll give a few minutes for all of you to join, and then let's start once everyone is in the quiz chat room. I see a few of us has joined the quiz. I'll just give about 1 or 2 minutes more for everyone to join this link, and then you can enter this code. Okay, now let's start with the first basic question. Let me just put start on it. Okay, I believe everyone can see the question. So the first question is, who is the founder of Bloomberg? I think this question is very easy. So we have 4 options here. I think this question is easy, but a little bit tricky. So yeah. Okay, I see that most of us actually answer the correct question, the correct answers. Now I think to answer this question, I think everyone actually answered the correct question, the correct answer. So the founder of Bloomberg is Mike Bloomberg. Now the question is, I just opened this question to the floor. Does anyone know what was Mike's initial idea to start the company? Everyone feel free to answer the question. You can unmute your microphone or you can just type something into the chat.
Hello, Miss. Can you repeat the question?
Yes, the question is, does anyone know what was Mike's initial idea to start the company? You can just take a guess to it.
Based on the history, I think it can be something about the finance and banking, since Bloomberg now focusing on banking and finance. Thank you, Miss.
Thank you for the answer. That's great. So it all started because of the transparency. So for Mike Bloomberg, the initial idea was to bring transparency into the fairness to the financial markets, and at first to the bond market only, because fixed income is traded on an exchange like equities. There wasn't a common place for buyers and sellers to get to the common price of a fixed income product, such as, for example, a corporate bond. So smaller firms were missing out to the big banks, which Mike felt that it was quite unfair. And this led to a bigger idea, which is to bring a standardized data and analysis across all asset classes to the global securities. And over the 35 years later, Bloomberg has become the largest financial data provider and is one of the very few companies that has had revenue growth every year for each of those years. Okay, now let's moving on to the next question. Okay, the second question is, which company purchased our first 22 Bloomberg terminals? Okay, I see from here that some answer JP Morgan, 6 people answer Merrill Lynch, and then 3 people answer Wells Fargo, and 0 answer Citi. Okay, now let me reveal the correct answer. It's Bank of America Merrill Lynch. Okay, so actually Bank of America Merrill Lynch is our ever first client. And actually for Bloomberg, right, during the pandemic, things are not slowing down for us. So in a recent town hall, where Mike and the management community share about our company, actually our company is still performing exceptionally well as a business. We are a critical part of many of our clients' business continuity plan, and we help ensure that they can log on to the Bloomberg terminal from even anywhere. And many clients were not ready to do so, so they learn on us heavily. And as you can see, for even like students, right, at Universitas Diponegoro, even when that time during the COVID pandemic hit, you can also actually access Bloomberg Terminal. I believe that actually the university management will actually share some link for you guys to be able to access the terminal from home, which I will share later on at the end of the session as well. Now moving on to the third question, which is the last question. Okay, I think for this question, this is the hardest question. I see that actually a lot of people answer the correct one, but I guess that you are actually just taking a guess. So actually for Bloomberg Philanthropists, right? Bloomberg Philanthropists is actually a community. So we invest in 700 cities and 150 countries around the world to ensure a better, longer life for the greatest number of people. So this is actually an organization which focus on 5 key areas for creating lasting changes, which are arts, education, environment, government innovation, and public health. So I'll send this link to the Zoom chat. So if you ever wonder like what Bloomberg Philanthropy is, and if you want to learn more about this, you can click this link. Let me just paste it into the chat. Okay, now before we start to the session itself, let me just show you one more slide that I have. Okay, I believe you should be able to see my screen now. So in this slide, I have actually summed up all of the products that Bloomberg offers, as well as the customers, the client that we have in Bloomberg. So can anyone help me to answer what exactly do we do here at Bloomberg? Like what is the main product for the Bloomberg, or what exactly do we do here at Bloomberg? Can anyone please unmute the microphone and help me to answer the question? Anyone wants to take a guess? What exactly do we do here at Bloomberg? Or what is the main product that Bloomberg has?
Hello, Miss.
Financial data, I think.
Financial data is a good guess, but what is the main product that we have? I think I saw it before in the video about the introduction about University of Diponegoro.
Bloomberg Terminal.
Yes, that's correct. So our main product is Bloomberg Terminal, or we can call it as Bloomberg Professional Service. And it actually brings in about 75% of our revenue in Bloomberg. But what do we exactly do here? Okay, so I'll use the acronym of DANCE, DANCS, to highlight the key selling point of the Bloomberg Terminal. But at the highest level, it's a software that brings together all of these things in one fully integrated solution. So the first D is for data. Okay, so for the first D, it is for data. So investor needs to know what is happening across different asset classes or across different industries, or maybe across different companies, or even like across different regions in order to make a good investment decisions, right? So the Bloomberg Terminal actually delivers the highest quality data for all of these to our clients. So we cover everything, starting from fixed income to equities, to FX, to commodities, or even to indices and a lot of more. And then the second acronym is A, which is for analytics. But actually a number itself is not enough. So investors need to interpret and analyze the data, right? So this is why Bloomberg actually offers a suite of powerful analytics tool to do just this, and ranging from like industry analysis to peer valuation, even to like sophisticated calculators or to volatility comparisons. And then the next acronym is N, which is for news. But we have to go beyond the numbers. Our news actually provide like the context for why those numbers are the way they are. Our about 2,700 journalists produce 500 stories a day, okay, 500 stories a day from more than 120 countries across all topics, from the markets to companies to politics. And our news is delivered via our website, TV, radio, or even like magazines like Business a Week. However, what is really unique about our news is that it's also integrated into the terminal. So since the university students at University of Diponegoro has the access to Bloomberg Terminal, it means that you guys can read as many as news as you want just using the terminal itself. Okay, and then the next acronym is C, which is for communications. How many subscribers do you think we have to the terminal? Just give me a number, like 1,000, 100,000, 200,000, or just give me any number. Or maybe someone can just type a number into the chat. Okay, let me just reveal the answer. So we have over 330,000 subscribers in Bloomberg, and it's a very large network of financial professionals. So our clients, and like you are actually one of them, can use our email tools called Message or MSG or IB, which is the Instant Bloomberg, to help generate ideas, conduct research, or even to find like trading partners. Okay, and the last two acronym is E for electronic trading and S for service. So for electronic trading, our client wants to achieve like the best execution across multiple asset classes, meaning that they want to get the best price, right, at that point in time. So this is where they use the Bloomberg Terminal. So they can use Bloomberg Terminal to provide trading solutions to meet their needs on a single platform only. And we offer solutions for across all asset classes, starting from FX, FI, equities, future options at no extra cost. And lastly is service. So we have 24/7 our help desk support. So if any of you want to find any data in Bloomberg Terminal, or even want to schedule a training request because there's a particular of topic that you guys are interested into, you can reach out to our 24/7 help desk. Later also, I'll show you how to actually raise a training request or how to ask a question to the help desk if you guys have encounter any issues in the future. Okay, now let me share my Bloomberg screen to show you what are those products or functions that I have mentioned previously. So how can we actually use Bloomberg Terminal to achieve that kind of data? Sorry, I think someone raised a hand. Sorry, Christian, do you have any questions?
Yes, Miss. Yes, Miss.
Yes.
I want to ask question because I have used recently Bloomberg in in Semarang also. I use Bloomberg when I'm still in Singapore. Yes, from Bloomberg because I know like Bloomberg is like almost opening the data for the company. For yes, for
Yeah.
the Bloomberg ethics itself, is there any threshold? I mean, like any restriction to to far how far they can exploit the data to the to the outer side since the data about the financial sometimes for the company it is very confidential and very critical. Thank you, Miss.
Good question, Christian. Thank you. So just want to clarify here, by restriction, are you referring to like what is the like late or what is like the historical data that you can back to, or what kind of restriction that you are referring here?
Like how far Bloomberg like how far Bloomberg can exploit the data. Like from giving the data from the company to the people. To the subscriber itself. I think is there any like is there any restriction? For example, Bloomberg cannot export data about, for example, about the sales. Bloomberg are not allowed by the company to certain something restriction. Like restriction. Upon privacy of the company itself. Like that. Do you
Understood.
understand the
So
question?
basically, for all the data that you see in the terminal, it means that you actually have the right to like export the data if it's exportable. So if you see the export button, then it means that you can export the data. But I think what you mean by the question is like restriction, maybe like when you pull the data, to what kind of extent that you can use the data for your presentation. Is that what you mean?
Something like that. And but another question is, it like, is it like Bloomberg have any restriction? Like any, what I said, uh restriction to get the data from the company itself. I think, is there any restriction? For example, Bloomberg are not allowed by the company to exploit certain data or something like that.
I see. I think to simply answer the query, I think the answer will be no. So as long as you will be able to see the data, so let's say if you want to access like the financial statement or like income statement of a company, as long as the company is a public listed company and they publish the data, you will be able to see the data from the terminal. But I think for equity data, it will be discussed further in the third session, which will be presented by Bradley. So if you are interested into like finding the equity fundamentals data, then you can ask some questions like to the third session, which will be presented by Bradley. I hope
Okay,
that
thank you,
answers
Miss.
your query,
Yeah,
Christian,
it's
or do
very
you have
clear.
any other clarification? Okay, got it.
Yeah.
Okay, now, are you able to see my screen now or no? Okay, okay, so now I have shared my Bloomberg screen. So now actually in the next 15 minutes before we go to the next session for fixed income, I'll show you some introduction step to actually log into the Bloomberg terminal or how to navigate the data and functions. So this is the main screen that you will see the first time you log into your Bloomberg terminal at University of Diponegoro. So after you put the username and password, and I believe that it's something that will be provided by the management of your university that actually manage the Bloomberg terminal for the university, right? So after you log in, this is the main screen that you will see. And in this blue box, or we call this as search box, this is where you can type what kind of data that you want to look for. So let's say if you are looking for maybe just to pull a random security, let's say Apple, like Apple US equity, you can just type Apple in the comment bar, and then this is what you will see. So the first half of the page, it will give you the list of functions in Bloomberg Terminal. And the second half of the page will give you the list of securities here. Okay, so what it means by securities here is just basically means a security code. So as you can see, Apple US equity, it is linked to AAPL US equity. This is the security ticker. Okay, and here are the functions. So the functions just mean what are the pages that you can run if you want to search for, let's say, financial analysis. So here FA is the function. But I'll believe my colleague Bradley will talk more in depth into FA. But just to give you a big idea of what's the difference between a security ticker and the function. Now talking about news itself, we have a lot of news function that you can access from the Bloomberg Terminal. If you want to see the full breakdown of functions, you can run N in the search box and then press enter. And these are the list of news functions that we have in the terminal. Okay, but I wouldn't actually talk about all of the news functions here. I'll just pick some of them that I believe can be useful for you. So the first one is top, which is top news. So basically, if you run like the function of top in the command bar, you will see the list of functions, and it is grouped by different kind of subgroups. So starting from future stories, and then if you scroll down a bit, you will see like ESG news, finance news, and then economics and government, technology, etc. So let's say if I want to see what are the news that are now people look at for finance, you can click into the finance, and you will see all of this news. And then using this orange box, this is where you can add another keyword. So let's say if I want to search for finance news, but related to interest rate, you can type interest rate and press enter. And as you can see, you will see all the news here. You will also realize that we have a lot of news sources. So not only limited to Bloomberg News, we have like different kind of sources that you can also see from here. And once you click the news, you will see who wrote this news. In this case, it's a Bloomberg News, and you can see the news itself. We also have a translate button where you can translate this news to Bahasa Indonesia. So you can go to translate more languages, and then you can choose the languages that you want to translate this to. Okay, back to N, which is for news and research menu. The second one that we have is CN, which is individual company news. So this is the function that you can use if you want to search for a news specific to a certain company. So let's say Christian had a question previously on what kind of data that we can search for regarding a specific company, right? So if you want to see the related news related to a specific company, this is the page that you can use, CN. So how to do it? You can firstly run the security ID or the security ticker. So in our example, we use Apple. Once you have run the security, you will see that the security ticker has been loaded here. And then next, we can type the function. In this case, is CN, which is for company news. Okay. Once I run CN, you will see all of the news related to Apple. And it's published by different sources as well. So you can see the source from this option. Next, if you want to see for media, we also have MEDI function. So if I open a new page and I type this function, MEDI, you will see that this is the landing page if you want to access the Bloomberg media. So we have interactive TV if you want to watch like Bloomberg TV, or we have like Bloomberg Radio. So all of this can be accessed just by using one Bloomberg terminal. So you don't have to actually purchase another subscription for Bloomberg TV or Bloomberg News. All of this data regarding news, TV, radio, it all can be accessible through Bloomberg Terminal. And the last two functions that I want to walk you through, guys, are actually NSUB and SOCI. So NSUB means new subscription. So if before I walk you through some functions like top or CN, where top you can see the breakdown of news divided into each industry sector. Meanwhile, for CN, it's an individual company news. So for NSUB, it's a summary of news. So if I run NSUB and sub and then press enter, you will be able to change the market focus here. So if I click change market focus, we have so many market focus that we can change to. So in this case, since I want to see what are the news available for macroeconomics, I can choose economics, global economics, and update. And then we have a few options regarding macroeconomics. If you click into it, you will see what kind of news you will be getting if you subscribe to this news. So the difference between this NSUB and the other news functions are that for this one, it is actually a summary of the news. So if you want to make sure that you are up to date to the market events as economics or finance students, you want to make sure that you are actually aware of what is happening in the market. Then you can go to NSUB, you can choose the player type, the market focus, and then you will see what are the news available here, and you can click subscribe. There are some delivery options that you can choose over here. So one of them is alert catcher. It just basically means that once you subscribe to this news, every time there's a news related to this market event, then you will get alerted. Okay, I'll stop here for news. Does anyone have any questions for news? Does anyone have any question or all good? You can give a thumbs up if it's all good.
Well, perhaps there is no question. Well, you can continue.
Okay, understood. Okay, and lastly, this is for the basic search for news. So before I've walked you through top, CN, or NSUB, we can choose the market focus. Now, when it comes to finding news about a certain keyword, let's say you want to find news on maybe the Fed. The easiest way to find this is just to type news on and then the keyword news on the Fed. And then you will see all the news that are related to the keyword that we have typed previously. Because we are using an AI in our news integration platform. Basically, you just have to type news on and then the keyword, and you will be able to find what kind of news that you want to search for. It's not always related to finance or economics, any kind of news. So let's say if you want to find like news related to Manchester United, you can even type like news on Manchester United. Okay, because this news in Bloomberg, it doesn't work only for economics or finance, but for all kind of topics, you just have to type news on and then the keyword that you want to add. Okay, that is all about news. I hope that you guys can start implementing or using the Bloomberg Terminal to find any kind of news. So starting from now, if you want to search for news, just go to your computer lab, go to Bloomberg Terminal, log in, and you can easily find the news that you are looking for. You don't have to Google it or try to like search the keyword, but you can just search everything from here. Okay, and then moving on to the macroeconomics itself, I'll just walk you through two other functions before we move to the next session for fixed income. So the first function that I want to show you is for world economic statistics. This is a very powerful tool, especially if you want to search for statistics data around the globe. You can just go to EasyST, just type EasyST in the comment bar, and it will bring you to this page, World Economic Statistics. And then here on the left side, you will see the option to choose what country that you want to search for. So in this case, if I want to change it to Indonesia, I can just type Indonesia and press enter. Then you will see some of the key indicators options that you can choose for. So you can click the plus icon and you can see the breakdown of it. So from here, as we can see, we have real GDP data. This is the year-over-year percentage data. And then we also have, if we scroll down a bit, we have CPI data. So any kind of statistical data around the globe, you can just simply run ECST in the comment bar, then it will bring you to this page. If you see this icon, right, the chart icon, it means that if I click into it, you can see the the historical movement of the nominal GDP. So if you want to see the trend, or if you want to see whether there is an upward trend, downward trend, you can just simply go to ECST, choose the indicators from the left side, the left panel, choose what kind of data that you want to chart. In this case is GDP. Just click the chart icon, then you'll see the chart data. So this is the quickest way if you want to find macroeconomics or statistical data globally, and you want to see the movement of it. This will be the page. Okay, and the last one, this is for economics forecasts. So it's quite important to find what is the forecast data. But how to find the forecast data? Let's say I want to see what is the forecast for GDP or what is the forecast for CPI. The function that you can run is ECFC, or if you don't remember the shortcut of the function like ECFC, you can just type economic forecast. So just treat it as like using Google Chrome, Google search. Just search whatever data that you need to. In this case, is economic forecast. So just type economic forecast in the comment bar, and then you will see the function is ECFC. Once you find the function, just click into it, and then it will bring you to the economics forecast page. And how to use it, it's pretty straightforward. Just change the country to any country that you want to look for. In this case, I want to see the forecast of GDP in Indonesia. I can go to Indonesia, press enter, and you will see some of the indicators available here. So for GDP, right, we can see that we have the forecast data until 2025. So the data in orange, highlighted in orange, it's actually the actual data because these are like historical years. But if you want to see the forecast data for 2024, 2025, these are the forecasts. Now I want to see who actually provides this 5 number. What is the source? Because I mentioned previously that we actually really value transparency in Bloomberg, right? So how can we achieve this number? You can click into the number 5, and you will see all the contributors that contribute to this value. Okay, so 5 here is actually the median data of it. But if you want to see like the mean data, high, low, the weighted average, or even the real contributed value that was contributed by the firm, you can see the data from here. Okay, so for macroeconomics, to sum up, ECFC is the landing page if you want to find forecast data. You can just click the number and it will bring you to the forecast page. So you can see a list of contributors that contribute to this value, and everything is shown in this page. Meanwhile, for ECST, this is for the current or historical data because it's not forecast data. So this is if you want to see real GDP. I want to see the real GDP of, like, let's say USA or Indonesia. You can go to ECST. Okay, I'll stop for now. Actually, we have 3 minutes left before we go to the next session. But does any of you have any questions?
Okay, from Nadia Damayanti. Well, you can turn on your video, not only chat, to make it more interactive. Nadia?
Actually, it's okay. Since we run out of time, let me just answer to Nadia's question. So
Okay.
for the syntax, yes, you can just type whatever data that you need to. So let's say economics forecast, you can just type like economic forecast and you will find the shortcut from here. So you don't have to remember that, oh, ECFC is for the shortcut, etc. But if you want to see the full like breakdown of what kind of functions that Bloomberg offers, one function that you can run is USER. Okay, you can take a note of this function, USER. Oh, sorry, I think I haven't shared my screen. Let me just share my screen for a bit. Are you able to see my screen?
Yes, yes.
Okay, so before I mentioned that if you are looking for like, let's say forecast data, economic forecast data, you can go to the search box and you can type what kind of data that you want to search for. In this case, economic forecast, you can type economic forecast and then you will see the shortcut, right? ECFC. So you don't have to remember the shortcut. You don't have to remember the code. You can just type what kind of data that you are looking for. But in case if in your own spare time, you want to search for, you want to explore more other functions that Bloomberg offers, this is the function that you can take a note of. It's user, USER. Okay, once you run user, you can choose the market player to make sure that the functions here are the ones that are related to your market player, your chosen market player. You can click the pencil icon and then change the market layer to any of the market player that you are looking for. So in this case, if you want to see credit, then you can go to credit analysis by site, and then you will see the breakdown of the fixed income functions that we have. So for example, we have here, let's say, a credit comparable analysis, CCA. If you want to run this function, you can just go to this page. You can click into like CCA, or you can also type in the command bar, CCA, and it will bring you to the page, the CCA page. And one last thing that I want to share as well, which I believe can be useful, is that you can actually read the manual book of the function. So we have like a manual book or a help page book that you can read. And it's a step for like every function that we have in Bloomberg Terminal. So you just go to help icon here, the question mark icon. So let me just repeat it one more time. You can go to the question mark icon on the top right, and then you can choose help page. Then it will pull you all the help page that is related to the function that you load here, CCA. This is the quickest way for you if you want to actually explore more what are functions available in the terminal, and whether we have any manual book, any white paper on it, you can go to the help page. And one very last thing before I forgot, I mentioned earlier that we have 24/7 support in Bloomberg. So if you want to actually contact the help desk, if you have any questions that, let's say I want to find this data, but I couldn't find it, or any kind of data that you have, you can go to the question mark icon, live help, or using your Bloomberg keyboard, you can press F2 help button twice, 2 times. So F1, F1 2 times, or you can go to the question mark icon, then live help. Then you can ask what kind of questions. If let's say I want to find the capital structure of this company, but I don't know what is the function, then this is the best way for you to find, to actually reach out to us. Okay.
Any other question?
I think that is from now. After this, my colleague Fianca will take over the session. I think Fianca can also, I think Fianca has also helped answer some of the questions you guys have in the chat. But please feel free to ask any questions if you have so. The next session will be about fixed income. So I believe that the session would be very interesting. And yeah, that will be all from me. Thank you so much for listening, everyone.
So I'm Bianca. I'm one of the fixed income specialists at Bloomberg. And the portion for today's session with me is on fixed income. Before I dive too deep into fixed income, I'd like to give some context first, later on for you guys, so that we are on the same page. And after that, I will then talk about some functions that you may find useful. There's a 15 minutes Q&A at the end. We can use that, or you can, again, just text on the chat box, and then I'll answer that later on. Okay, perhaps before I start, you may be wondering, like, as a student, why do I need to care about Bloomberg Terminal? Why do I need to care about the functions? Why am I here? And I want to establish first with a bit of context of my experience. So I was once a finance and economics student as well, a few years ago, and my university actually had a Bloomberg Terminal, and we had access to something called Bloomberg Market Concept, which I think a lot of you or all of you also have access to. It is a certification to learn the basic functionalities on the terminal across asset classes. So you have macroeconomics, you have commodity, forex, fixed income, and equity. Now, if you do have access to that, I would highly recommend you to go on to that training, because that really gives you a full picture of what you can do with the terminal. One of my biggest regrets was not using it enough when I was a student. And as I heard from Ade, Undip is actually one of the only university in Indonesia that has access to Bloomberg Lab. So do make use of that and ask as many questions as you want today for me. And I think what could be useful for your purposes, Brenda already talked about news, how you can use some of the news function to access our news. But another thing is that think about dissertation, think about tugas-tugas, skripsi, begitu ya. You need a lot of data set to conduct that, especially if your skripsi has to be, a secondary, has to get the data from a secondary source. Maybe you cannot do interviews right away, you cannot do surveys, then Bloomberg is another good tool for your purpose to get all of those data that you need. So perhaps as an example, Brenda mentioned about ECST or ECFC earlier, and you can use those for your own purpose as well. Okay, so enough of the intro. I will now share my screen and share a little bit about fixed income before I start my other presentation on the functions. So give me a while for this. Okay, let me know if the screen is visible on your end. Thumbs up? Yeah? Okay, sure. So I like to start with this when I talk about fixed income. You may be familiar with the icon here. This is the icon of Netflix. And I hope some of you have watched some Netflix shows or Netflix series. And I like to think about it in this perspective. When you look at Netflix, there are movies that they make themselves, right? They have Netflix originals, they call it. But they also have movies or series, K-drama, C-drama, whatever you want, that is not necessarily made by Netflix, but is actually in the platform. Now, you may be wondering, where do they get the money from to make those movies and to pay the actor, pay the actresses, the cameraman, the studio, and to acquire those contents? They have to buy the license from the other studio that already make the movies, right? So the big question is, how do you think they fund their series and their K-dramas? Maybe if anyone has any idea, you can put it in the chat box. How do they get the money to do all these things? You can think of it from the perspective of yourself as a finance or accounting student. How do not just Netflix, but any other companies usually fund their operations? You can put it in the chat box if you have any ideas. Okay, if everyone is a bit shy, it's okay. There's no right or wrong. Yeah, I'm gonna just wait a few more seconds if anyone is brave enough to share their thoughts. Okay, customer subscription. Sponsors ads. Okay, that's more from the extra external, but it's from the users, right? From us. But you would only pay for the subscription if there's already something within Netflix. If there's nothing in the website, you open Netflix and there's no movies, would you still subscribe? Maybe no, right? So in the beginning, they would need those capital to run their operations, to make these movies. And you can think of it from, maybe if you study finance, there are two ways of financing. Sorry, I'm just looking at the chat box. Okay, there's two ways of financing. Most famous, equity and debt financing, right? So when we hear the word debt, utang gitu ya, it's quite easy to imagine it, right? So it's the same concept as you would when you borrow money from someone. You borrow money, you borrow 1 million. Kamu pinjam 1 juta sama saya. You get the lump sum amount of 1 million. I give that 1 million to you, and you promise me that you're gonna pay back monthly, or you're gonna pay back at the end, maybe next month or next year, right? So that's one option. That's debt financing. Now, similarly, you can think of Netflix as borrowing money like that through debt. We typically call it as issuing debt or issuing bond. So bond is the security or the product that they are selling. In Indonesian, I think we call it obligasi. That's bond, right? So okay, you now issue this bond. You can think of it like a certificate, right? Let's say as Netflix, I borrow money from you now. I borrow 1 million. I tell you, I'll definitely pay it back in 2 years. There's a maturity, right? In 2 years' time, I'll pay that back to you. But of course, you don't, if you think about time value of money, maybe you've already learned this through economics or finance, that, 1 juta sekarang, 1 million today versus 1 million 2 years from now, because of inflation and other things, that 1 million will be valued less in the future. So as someone who is lending the money, I would want to be compensated with something. And one way is through something called coupon. So every 6 months, maybe you'll get paid 100,000 rupiah. And up until the end of that term, that maturity, and then you'll get the initial 1 million back. So just to establish, there are two terms that I already used here. One is coupon. This is the fixed payment that you receive. And another one is maturity, which is the when will this bond mature? When is the end of this bond, right? So that's just to give you a bit of context on fixed income. And actually, Netflix is not the only company. I use Netflix because it's the easiest for me to understand. But if you can see here, this is actually a news that Bloomberg publishes. You can see Tesla, T-Mobile, Dell. They also borrow, billions of dollars, and they do it through issuing bonds. Okay, so you can think of it as one way. Debt involves borrowing money directly. Whereas the other way to finance your company or any projects that you're doing, as I mentioned before, there's also something called equity. Now, the equity portion will be directed by my colleague Bradley after this, but we'll leave that for Bradley. But a little bit of context, or just the differences between debt and then equity, is perhaps some of you have invested in stocks, right? BBRI, BBCA, begitu. You invest in stocks. That is equity. That's how. There's another way for companies to fund or finance their operations or whatever it is. They give a stake of their company. And so yeah, that's equity. We will not be talking about that, but that's just an example. Now, oh, sorry. Yeah, this is just another news that we also published about how Netflix kept on adding bonds. But perhaps as orang awam gitu, we don't really hear a lot about bonds, because actually bonds are usually traded in an institution level. Quite rare for individual investor like for myself to buy a bond, but it's very, very common for us to buy, stocks, right? And just to reiterate, the name fixed income, maybe you're still confused. You never really hear about this, equity is quite common. Just think of the word fixed. You get a fixed amount of income from your investment or from buying a security. And that security is typically a bond, okay? All right, let me just see my notes if I miss anything. Okay, yeah. So that's about it for my introduction to fixed income. I will move on to talk a little bit more on the functions in the terminal. So let me share my terminal screen. Okay. Yeah. So before I talk further, I'd like to just also give a context on why are we even looking at the terminal, right? What are we trying to look for in the Bloomberg terminal? Now, remember we talked about bonds before. So there's a product, right? But let's just say, I want to buy this bond, or I want to look into what bonds do Netflix have, right? Or what bonds do Indonesia as a government has, there are ways to look into this in the terminal, and I'll be showing that to you in a bit. Maybe just an idea, if you have an essay that you have to write, your scriptsy or dissertation, or perhaps you're working with your professor to, co-publish or co-author a paper. One of the activities I personally enjoy doing when I was in university, you can leverage on the data that you can find in the terminal to do that. Okay, so today I'll be going through how you can find the bonds in the terminal. What are the things that you can look at, some description. We talked about coupon, we talked about maturity earlier. I'll show you also how you can locate those things. We'll also look into the research around bonds. And I know that today's, your summer course topic is around sustainable development. So I hope that I'll be also able to give you some context on how you can use the terminal to look into sustainable development related topics. Okay. So a quick refresher from Brenda's session earlier. This is something that we call the command line in the terminal. This is where you would put in your keywords, your functions, your tickers. So one of the maybe questions that we get a lot is that how do I remember all of these stickers? I think someone asked that question to Brenda earlier. And actually, aside from the function that Brenda showed earlier, which is user, you could also look into this function at the top, related functions menu. So if you think of Bloomberg's functions, there's so many of them. This is actually, all of them are actually housed in this menu. So from here, you can see all the different markets. We talked about equity, we talk about commodity. We also have fixed income, which is typically credit, or if you're looking at corporate bonds, it will be credit. If it's a sovereign or a government bond, it will be sovereign. Then earlier we talked about news, we talk about research. You can also just click into this right here, and it will bring you to all of the news related functions. If you click into economic analysis, earlier we talked about ECST, it is also available here. So you don't need to remember everything, just remember one thing, which is that you can click into the related functions menu on top here. Then you can also click on the main menu of Bloomberg functions to go back to the original one. Right, so first things first, if you are trying to locate a bond, that means you need to screen for the bonds. You need to search because there's a lot, there's a huge number of bonds out there. And if you ask someone or a trader or an analyst, they may not know all of them. And we talked about maturity earlier. the expiry date of the bonds. There might also be bonds that, let's say, now you're looking into that bond, but perhaps like it's maturing tomorrow. So then when you look into it tomorrow, it's no longer investable. You cannot buy it anymore because it already matures. So Bloomberg has a very powerful tool where you can screen from millions of bonds with specific criteria that you want to set. Okay, so we go into credit here, and then there should be, just a second, oh, securities and help. Then on finding securities, there's SRCH here on top. SRCH is actually my favorite functions because of how powerful it is. It is our fixed income search. So if you click into this, you'll be able to see this landing page. So firstly, a few things that you want to remember. This is the orange bar that you see here is actually where you can input your criteria. So criteria could be, oh, I want a bond that matures in 10 years. I don't want a bond that matures like tomorrow because it's not like relevant for me. Or you want bonds that are issued specifically by Netflix or specifically by Apple or any other company that you can think of. Then you can input all of those here. I'll show you how you can do that in a while. But first, let me just draw your attention to the universe here on top. So when we talk about universe, you can think of it as a literal universe, which is like everything, under the sun, under the skies. And you can see here, it says 3.2 million securities. So that means at the moment in the Bloomberg Terminal, there's about 3.2 million securities or fixed income securities within the corporates and governments asset classes. So the easiest way to think about asset class is just, especially in fixed income, just remember if it's corporate, it means bonds issued by companies. If it's governments, it's bonds issued by government. Same thing is usually used to finance projects, or for corporates, usually it's also for general purpose. For governments, it's to build, the infrastructures, bangun jalan tol atau bangun kota baru, that kind of things. Governments can issue bond for that as well. Okay. So now that we have established on SRCH that we are looking at corporate and government fixed income, we have originally 3.2 million securities. But then if you see the first line here, by default, when you open SRCH, it will give you the security status that is active. Okay, so when we talk about, earlier we talked about maturity, right? Within this 3 million, there's actually bonds that already matured, maybe already matured like 2 decades ago, right? You don't want to see that. So here, the criteria selected by default will be the ones that are still active, that you can buy, that you can trade. Right, and then we talk about Netflix, so I'm going to use a Netflix example again. So on the orange bar here, you can actually type in issued by Netflix. Okay, you can hit enter, and then it will automatically give you issuer name, include NFLX, which is the ticker name for the company Netflix. Okay. Another option is you can first type in, let's say, issuer, and then from the drop down, there's a suggestion. Issuer name, issuer rating, but it's a little bit hard when there's, so for example here, it gives you issuer name United States, issuer name JP Morgan, but I cannot find Netflix here, right? So that's why I initially just put Netflix like that. Okay. Another thing that you can add, probably you want something that gives you a coupon of 5% or even more than 5%. We can also put it here, coupon more than 5. And then hit enter. Okay, so you can see earlier we go from 3.2 million securities, which is impossible to look at one by one. Then we have 447,000 active securities, also impossible to look at one by one. When we screen for only issued by Netflix, there's 20 matches. That is much more manageable. You can look into 20 bonds, but not 400,000. And then we further refine our search. Then the coupon, we want a coupon that gives more than 5%. Then it's we have 6 tickers or 6 bonds here in the terminal. Okay. Now we can click on results here. at the bottom right earlier, and then you'll see all of the bonds that are issued by Netflix that fits the criteria that we set. We want the coupon more than 5%. So here you can see it's 5.8, 5.3, 6.3, 5.7, so on and so forth. Okay, so from here, I'll pause for a while. Any questions on this first function? Okay, I'm just looking at the chat box, so if there's no question, I will go ahead. Right, so now that you already located the bonds from SRCH, you definitely want to look into the details of the bonds, right? Oh, I want to know if it's going to pay me every 6 months, every year, every 2 years, or that kind of thing. So one thing that kind of you can talk it as a trick that I like to do is just to drag and drop it to the command line. That's the easiest way to do it. But if you don't want to do that, you can also right click and then load Netflix, this sticker. When we say there's a, let me pause for a bit and just give a bit of more context as well. In the terminal, we like to say load the ticker, or like run the function. So when you talk about functions, there are some functions that needs a ticker to work with. And some of the functions that I'll be sharing with you after this are the functions that need ticker to work. So earlier, you remember when we load SRCH, the search function, we actually did not load any bonds. But now we have loaded the bond, and we can see some description of the bond. To do this, you can also go into related functions menu. You don't have to remember the functions. And then you go back to credit. There's here on top, analyze Netflix ticker. And then there's security description, or DES. The more you use it, the more you get used to all of these codes and functions. So now I don't have to kind of open the menu again, but if you don't remember, it's fine. You can go to the menu. But let's say I want to do DES, or I want to look into the description. So I know up here, the bond is already loaded. Now I just type in DES to find the security description. Okay, here, there's a lot of information. Which one do we look at, right? So it depends on your purpose. So if, let's say, you are doing a research and you want to look into a specific industry of a list of bonds, then you know that for Netflix, it is categorized under media entertainment industry. Earlier, we talked about coupon. It is also put here in the DES page. Because, if you look at up here, okay, maybe one thing before I go further, one thing that I forgot to mention is how to read the ticker. So for Apple that Brenda showed earlier is quite straightforward. I think if you go to like any other platforms, Apple is AAPL. BCA is BBCA, right? But with bonds, it's a little bit trickier. So if you look at here, we have NFLX 7/8, and then some sort of date. The way you read this is the first chunk, this one, is the issuer ticker. So when I say issuer ticker, you can actually load the company if it's public. So NFLX, there's also NFLX US equity, which is the equity ticker for the company. But we will not discuss too much into that detail. And then the second part here, the fraction, the one with fraction, or sometimes it's just 5 or 3, depending on the coupon, is actually the coupon rate. So 5/7/8 is about 5.87%. And then at the back here, it is the maturity. So this Netflix bond will mature in September 15th, 2028. Okay, that's a little bit on how to read the ticker. Okay, now back to the DES or description page. You can also see the issue price, how much it was sold at when it was issued. When was this issued? It was issued back in 2018. So it has been 5 years now, right? All right, another thing that you can look at is additional information. So remember we talked about how some of these bonds can be used for different things. I'll show you a different one later on, but for Netflix, you can see that the use of proceeds is for general corporate purposes. So it can be for anything. It can be for their operations, paying for their electricity bill, or it could also be for acquiring content or making their own movies, right? Another thing that you can look at, let's say, when we talk about fixed income and we talk about lending money, you want to be sure that the person or the company that you're lending your money to have the ability to pay you back. Because otherwise, if they default, if they go bankrupt, they will not be able to pay you the money back, and you will then lose that amount of money. So ratings is one of the things that typically investors like to look at. It's a rating of how you could think of it as how safe it is to invest here. If you look at government bond, if you think about like US government bond, they are often called as risk-free rate. There's no risk in investing in US government bond. Although it's not entirely, 100% true, but theoretically, that's typically what we think of. And they may have an AAA rating, so green, it is so safe, right? Now we look at Netflix. There are three rating agencies. There's the biggest ones. There's Moody's, there's S&P's or Standard and Poor's, and there's also another one is Fitch, right? So if you take a look at the example of S&P here, we can click into the bond rating. So as of the 2nd of August of this year, this bond is rated at triple B plus. But if you want to see how much it has changed over the year, you can click into it and see, okay, back in 2018, it's actually only B plus. So over the years, it's actually had gotten better. Okay, so that's one of the things that you can look at. Another one that you can look at is also the involved parties. So when a company wants to issue a bond, they don't just like, hey, here's a bond, please buy it. They would typically go to some banks to help them structure the bond. So if you see like the coupon rate, the price, the maturity date, there's some analysis going on in the background to decide those numbers. And typically they would go for a syndicate group, which is just a group of banks that would help them. And if you're looking into, okay, who are the ones behind this who are helping Netflix, you can see there's Deutsche, there's Goldman Sachs, there's JP Morgan, and so on and so forth. Okay, so that's a very general overview of a bond. So think about it, like from one bond you can already, and from one function you can already get so much information, and it's up to you on what you want to use it for, essentially. Okay. So before I go further, any questions, anything that I can address? Anything unclear before I go on? Okay, there's actually one, oh yeah, Padanes, yes.
Well, I have a question, but I think I will keep the question on the
Okay.
last. On the last.
Okay, sure. Okay. Okay, there's actually one question from Ali Musana. I'm very curious where Bloomberg gets all the data. Can it be trusted? So actually, let me give an example of the bond ratings. This data actually comes from the rating agency themselves. So Moody's, Standard and Poor's, they actually contribute the data to us. So it is trustworthy because it comes from them, right? It comes from the rating agency, or if it's a company data, it comes from their own filings. I think later on Bradley may talk a bit more on that, but companies do send in reports where you would see the EBITDA, the PE ratio, and things like that. So yeah, don't worry, it's trustworthy.
Okay, thank you.
No worries. Okay. Oh yeah, Pak Ali. Maaf, Pak. Okay, I will continue with the next function. So we already finished with DES. Another thing specific to fixed income or specific to bond is something called cash flow analysis. So when you're lending your money to someone, you want to know like, okay, how much am I getting back every period? So before I go there, if you look into the bond information, there's actually a coupon frequency here. So SA means semi-annually. So it means that this bond, the coupon, the 5.8%, and if you're wondering what's the value, jadi kayak 5,8% ini berapa gitu yang aku dapetin. It's usually from the issue price, so just times the percentage of the coupon with 100 here. So about 500, sorry. Yeah, about $5 if it's in USD. Okay, so you want to know, okay, then how much am I getting each period? How much am I getting every 6 months? I want to know my cash flow. I want to know if I can, pay my, Shopee Pay later. If I give you this 1 million now, right? There's a function called CSHF, cash flow analysis, that gives you the breakdown. When will be the next payment date? What am I getting? And also when will the principal or the initial money that I'm lending you, when will I get it back? Right, so this is like all of the dates. And if you remember in the concept of time value of money, I did mention earlier in the beginning that value-nya uang itu bisa tergerus ya over time. Karena inflasi, karena satu dan lain hal. So you want to know, based on this idea of time value of money, if I discount all of the money that I'm getting in the future, kira-kira, for this year, like at the present moment, what is the value of this money? Because I don't want to lend you 1 million and then get less than that in the future, right? I don't want to lend you for too long to the point where, in 2050, maybe the value of 1 million rupiah is nothing. You cannot buy anything important from it, right? So you can go into present values and you can see, okay, that means all of the cash flow here. So you may be getting 29,000 in 15th November, but actually in today's term, it's actually only about 28,900, right? And then so you add everything up and then you will be able to know how much is the actual value that you're getting at the present time from this. Okay, so this is another useful tool if you want to analyze a bond. Okay. So far, okay, hang on. Before I move further, maybe another function that I can share. Let's say, bonds are actually traded. You can buy bonds, but as I mentioned, typically it's by institutional investor. Think of it if you work in banks and you want to buy bonds. I want to see how the bond price have change over time, right? There's a function that you can visualize this with. It's called GP, or the line chart. You can hit enter. Just give it time to load. Okay. So this will be, we will be giving you a bit of context on how the price has changed over the years. So right now it's at about 108. Sorry, this is actually a G spread. Let me try to change it to last price. Okay, so this is the last price, harga ya. So now it's trading at about $102. Remember from the DES page, the issue price when it was issued in 2018 was about 100. You can see that the price actually dropped to about 97 in September of last year. So this is also useful if you want to look how much has the prices changed over time. GP. You can use GP with almost any tickers. Earlier we talked about equity ticker, NFLX, US equity, or APL. You can also do the same thing. Okay, now because I already talked about how to generally look for bonds, I know that the topic of this summer course is AI and also sustainable development. I'll be giving an example of how you can use the functions that we already talked about, but with sustainable development in mind. Okay, so earlier we went to SRCH, right, to look for bonds. Okay, the example that I showed you was that I put the criteria one by one in the orange bar. But one thing that we have invested heavily on, and is actually a recent update on the terminal, is we now use natural language processing, or NLP, when you use SRCH. So what it means, in simple terms, in human terms, is that you can use it like you would with Google. It's you can put the criteria in one sentence and it will read it. So as an example, I put SRCH and then I put a space here. So taking our Netflix example earlier, I can just put SRCH bonds issued by Netflix with coupon more than 5. I can also just type in like over 5 and it will read the same thing. Hit enter. Okay, and it gives us the same criteria as we put earlier. It's just that this time it got expanded. It includes like all the other ones. That it's not just corporate and governments, but you can ignore that part. Okay, so for sustainable development, very simple. Use the same NLP, the natural language processing. Put it in one sentence, like Google. Let's say I want to know which company in Indonesia that issue bonds that has sustainable is related to sustainable, whether it is the projects, the money that they use, itu dipakai kemana gitu? Is it like used for sustainable projects? So I can do SRCH space Indonesia. Then I can add sustainable debt. I hit enter, and this should already automatically give all of the criteria for you. So again, from 1 million active bonds, there are 1,500 that is located in Indonesia as the region of risk, and 26 of those have a sustainable debt instrument indicator. This is just one of the indicator that gives you an idea whether the bond is being used for a sustainable project or not, something like that. Okay, so I can look at 26. I click on results. Now here are all the list of the bonds that has sustainable link to it. So we have Japfa Comfit, ada Bank Rakyat Indonesia, Bank Mandiri. We also have the Indonesia Treasury, which is the government bond. Ada Star Energy Geothermal, ada Pertamina yang baru IPO juga recently. Okay, so here are the list. You can choose whichever you want to analyze. But maybe one thing that I can also show you is there is this R button at the top left. It is actually a relevance indicator. So especially when you look at a lot of bonds, you may only want to look at some bonds that are other people are also looking at. So this is just an indicator of how many people kind of like click into the bonds and whether it is like on people's attention or not. If it's not really look into, then maybe it's not really out there, it's not really famous per se, then you can look into the ones with a higher relevance right here. So let's just say I take the example of Jaffa Confit. Again, I drag and drop this up. Then I go to DES to find more information about it. Okay, so again, the industry is classified as food and beverage. I know that this bond pays a semi-annual coupon at 5.375%. Sorry, 5.375%. It was issued initially at $99.46, and it will mature in about 3 years. Some basic information. Now, if you want to analyze further, like, okay, I want some documentation that will tell me like how are they using this for sustainable related projects? Because all we know that they produce pakan ternak misalnya. How is that related to sustainable development? I want to know more. A function that I like to use, and if I put my like student hat, if I were a student, I would find this function very helpful. It is DS. So DS is a document search. You can search for research. You can search for filings. Filings are typically any documents that the companies would upload in a sense, and all the other ones. But for the purpose of today's demonstration, I will go straight to DSCF, which is the corporate filings. You can also just click into DS and then you can filter from there. But let me just show you how it looks like on DSCF. So this is the document search. When I talk about you can filter, you can actually filter from here, what type of filing you want, and any other topic. but it's just easier when you know that you're looking for any documentation that is related to that company, that is a report. Typically, people will go for DS space CF. Okay, so here there are two documents. We have ESG framework, which is the document that was produced by JAPA Config themselves. And there's also another one, ESG external review. So external review is typically when they hire an agency, hire someone to audit, ini udah bener nggak nih, memang dipakai buat sustainable project gitu, or they're just talking, atau cuma they just put out there that they're doing it for sustainability but they don't really do it. So that's when they do external reviews. Okay, let me just stop share so I can share my entire screen. Give me a second. Okay, so you can click into this to get the document. So let's say I click on the second one. This would pull you the ESG framework, the plan. You can think about you can think of it that way, that JAPFA Compete produced back in 2021. This is basically, they're saying these are all the things that I will be doing with the proceed from that bond. When investors give them, 100 million, 200 million, these are all the things that they'll be doing. It's a pretty long document, but you can look into it. But if you want to only specifically look into sustainability, there's a sustainability strategy here. Now, here they talk about how they want to align their strategies with some UN SDG goal. If you look into sustainable development, you know that there are some goals set by PBB, the UN. And you can look into, okay, what are their missions and all of the details on how they will be, what are the frameworks, right? And how they're going to be contributing to UN SDG from here. Okay, now we compare with the one that is actually sent in by external. You click on the first one, and I can't take it up. Okay, no worries. So on here, this is a second-party opinion on the JAPFA Confit, and it was done by a company called VE. I'm not too sure what it stands for, but there's an agency that does this review. And you can see, okay, based on the review of an external party, you can see that there's actually no controversies around ESG based on JAFA Confit's use of proceeds. But you can see that perhaps on an issuer level, so on a JAPA Confit as a company, not on the bond itself, but as a company, using this agency's methodology, there are 2 out of 17 activities that are quite controversial. Maybe there's something about their animal welfare that is not right, or issues about genetic engineering within JAPA Confit. And there's also some key findings. They mentioned that, okay, based on the KPI they already set, it's all aligned. It's, JAPA Confit did what they say they would. And all of these, you can see all of the details on the descriptions and all the explanations here as well. I know I'm running out of time, but just bear with me for a little while. But these are the kind of documents and the kind of things that probably if you go on Google, you can't find it. These are the things very specific, and it's very easy to find. You just load the bond, you load the SCF, and then you can find all of these. Right. So if you are, maybe if you're thinking, you want to do your dissertation or anything on like specific companies, you want to thematically look into what are the Indonesian companies that are that say they would be using the money that they're getting from the bonds to for positive, sustainable development projects. Are they actually, doing it, in like, are they actually doing what they say they will be doing? So these are some of the things that you can look into to get to your analysis. Okay, last but not least, and then I'll be answering questions, is earlier we mentioned about news, and there's actually some very useful functions also for news specific to sustainable development. So NI, just remember NI, this is a news topic function. You can type in the keywords here just as you would in Google. So let's say I type in energy. So I want to specifically look into anything to do with energy technology. Okay, there's energy trading, solar energy. There's even energy efficiency technology. Let's say this is what I want to look at. I can click into this. Again, you don't need to remember the NI, NRG, EEFF. I don't also remember that. It's very, very long. But now it brings you to a news feed. Let's say you want to specifically look at Indonesia. You can also put in the criteria here. You hit enter. Okay, there are a lot of news that is sorted over time from the most recent. And let's say, okay, I want to look into some news written by Mongabe. So Mongabe is actually one of the sources that I like to use when I was still in university as well. Then you can click into it, and then there's a news from them that you can access, an article almost. So this one is about Adaro Sustainable Smelter slammed as greenwashing. Okay, that's one of the things. If you go back, you can also read report given by any brokers, right, or any sort of research house. If you see the icon here with like a paper, that means there's a document here. It's not just an article. So let's say I click into this. This is issued by UOB. Now you get this note or this research about how Indonesia is identifying, how Indonesia's outlook around green energy. And this is, just very, very insightful. So these kind of things, if you think about, using Bloomberg for your own purpose at university, it's not just about the data, and it's not just about like, oh, it's like so complicated to use, but they're actually really specific things that you can look at, that you can benefit from, as long as you know how to search for it. And my biggest tip is just to use keyword on the command line on here, and you'll be able to find them. Okay, so I'm going to stop here. Thank you very much for listening. I will take any questions.
There is one in
Oh,
chat.
there's a, yeah. Does Bloomberg Terminal provide Bitcoin or cryptocurrency data? Yes, we do. Let me just quickly check. Okay, so let me click onto my screen again. There's actually a cryptocurrency monitor. Again, I don't remember this, but you can type in on the command line, crypto currency. Then you can see here on the top, there's CRYP, cryptocurrency monitor. Then you can click into that. Yeah, so there's data on Bitcoin, on Ethereum, even on Dogecoin. Also, they also have some data on those things. Okay, let me see. So tutorial on Bloomberg, I mentioned about BMC earlier, Bloomberg Market Concept. Let me put it in the chat. This is a certification that you can take. It's like an online course that you can take. And honestly, it's amazing. When I already graduated and before I joined the company, I also look into this, and then it refreshes my memory on a lot of economic and finance concept. Yeah, so I would highly recommend that. Or as also Brenda mentioned earlier, you can ask us question on help desk by pressing help on the Bloomberg keyboard, F1 twice, or on here. So if you're, let's say you're on the cryptocurrency page, right? And then you're like, oh, I don't know how to interpret like this number, like what do you mean? Or how do I find Dogecoin here? You can click on the question mark on top here. And you can click on live help. And one of us, maybe me, maybe my colleagues, I will be able to answer your question. Okay, I'm just trying to see if there's any other question I missed.
Well, oh, okay. Well, I have a question about Bloomberg.
Yes.
My question is, recently, I think 4 months ago or 3 months ago, U.S. bank, there is some bankruptcy in the U.S. bank caused by the increase of Fed rate, which it reduced the value of bond that they hold. So my question is, does Bloomberg provide data specific information of bond held by bank, such as how much the market value of that bond and book value, and how many coupon rate of the bond that particular bank hold.
Sure. So one thing that just generally, I think you're talking about either Credit Suisse or SVB.
Yes, Silicon Valley, Credit Suisse.
Silicon Valley. Okay.
Yeah. So my
sure.
question is, take for example, I want to get information about PNE. How many variation of bond that hold by BNE?
Okay, sure. Actually, for that, give me a second to check BNE. So when you talk about book value or PE ratio and that kind of thing, I think it'll be more on the equity side. So it's kind of linked because when you think of bonds, typically you look at it from the issuer level as well, who is issuing the bond. So typically you look into the PE ratio of like the issuer as a whole, the company as a whole, and that will be discussed later on in the equities section. But let me just quickly search on whether we can find the holdings of a bond. One way which is quite useful is if you remember back on SRCH and we, let's say, put Indonesia government bond, okay? When you click on results, oops, sorry, SRCH Indonesia sustainable bond. I think this is easier. Okay, click results. There's actually a holders matrix on top. There's the fourth tab. Let me zoom in. So once you click here, you can actually see from all of those bonds that we have screened for, who are the ones holding these bonds. So you could see that there's this company, I'm not too sure what it is, but there's BlackRock, there's Allianz that's also holding those bonds. So that's from the perspective of you have a list of bond and who are the ones like holding it. But I know that you're asking for the other way around. Let me just check that and I'll get back to you in a bit. Perhaps another thing that I like to use is like, let's say when I first hear about SVB and I hear about Credit Suisse, there's so many things about it and there's so many news, right? And you don't really know like which one do I trust or like what is it exactly? Is there like an explanation? There's actually a function that I really like. It's called Quick. It's a Bloomberg Quick Takes. So here what it does is it gives you sort of a summary of what's happening on a specific topic. And it doesn't have to be finance topic. There are also other topics here, in let's say commodity or like environment. So if I type in SVB, I'm pretty sure we have one. Okay, so if you go to quick and then you type in SVB, there's actually a quick take on it. If you click here, there's a summary on, okay, what is actually happening. So instead of reading like 100 of news, you can just go here and then read the summary. Yeah, just a tip if you want to understand more about like a specific thing.
Okay, so the conclusion is if I want to search the information of the bond holds by a particular firm, the menu is in the equity side.
So okay, no. So on that, I'll have to check further. But what I meant by the equity side is more on if you want to look into the book value or like the price PE ratio of a issuer, then that is equity because we're already talking about the issuer, not the bond itself. But if you want to see, okay, like this company, what are the bonds that they hold? I believe there's a function for that, but just let me check. I'll get back to you in the chat during like Bradley's session.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you very much.
It's just that even for me, ini functionnya banyak banget ya Pak. Jadi
Yeah,
even for me, I'll have to check. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. There's a question on, if I have more question about the terminal, can I get the panelist email? Actually, the best way is to go back to what I mentioned earlier. You can click on the question mark icon on the top right here, and then click on live help. That'll be the easiest way because you'll get access to one of the specialists to be able to help you, or you can another one, yeah, the BMC, the Bloomberg Market Concept that I mentioned earlier, will be another one. Any other final question before I move on? Is there any automatic translation function? Yes, for news we do have. So let me go back to my screen. So let's say I just randomly pick a news on
بايه البيزنس تكنولوجي ده تراك تاني ده يعني مسار تاني عندنا بيدرس فيها العلوم الاداريه والبروجرام لغه البرمجه يعني برضه في
Okay, sure. So on news we do have the translation. We can translate menus essentially. So you can click on translate on the top and then just pick on the languages. Yeah. Another thing is you can also click here if you want to directly see the news directly on one of these languages that they have. I hope that answers your question. Yeah, sorry, Bradley is just joining. So if anyone has any question before I go.
Well, I think we should move to another section, another section, because we are in the 15 p.m. So each session has 1 hour. So I think we should move to the third session.
Okay, yes, Bradley is just joining. So just give us a couple minutes.
Okay, so thank you, Miss Fianca. Big applause to Miss Fianca.
Thank you for having me. Just a quick one. So for your question, if you want to see, let's say BBRI itu pegang apa aja begitu ya bondsnya, there's actually a function. So if you just load BBRI, the ticker, HLDR, then it should give you all of the positions that they have on the other bonds here. It can also give you the total market value. If you're interested in this, I can share more details on how you can navigate the HLDR function.
Okay. Thank you, Miss Fianca.
No worries. Okay, thanks everyone for having me. If you have any question, just help. Just click help twice. Thank you. Bye.
Okay, bye, Miss Fianca. Hello, good afternoon, Mr. Bradley.
Hi everyone. Good afternoon to all. So thanks for taking time this afternoon to have this session with us on Bloomberg. So of course, let me just give you a very quick introduction of what we actually do here. So for me, I'm personally with the equities team. So for me, I look at any equities related queries on the help desk. So when you actually press F1 on the help desk, when you raise an equity related question, it will either come to any of us and I might be the one answering questions on that end. So let me just give you a understanding of what equity is about. So I understand from my colleagues, Brenda as well as Bianca, they have actually went through quite comprehensively on fixed income as well as introduction to Bloomberg. So for today, I will be sharing more on introduction to equities. So if everyone has actually taken a break, so let me just proceed from here. Yeah, I'll give a break very shortly in case anyone have questions. Yeah, thank you. So let me just share my screen. Yes. Can I get an indication if everyone can see my screen? Yes. Okay. Great. So. Right, so today we'll be going through several things. So first on the agenda will be how we can actually locate what we call tickers. So can anyone just tell me what do you understand from the word ticker or equity ticker? Just anyone. You can type in the chat if you're shy, or feel free to just unmute yourself. We can have a short discussion on this as well. Yeah. Anyone?
Yeah, you can see the
Chat.
screen. I'm sorry, we can see the screen clearly.
Okay. Yeah. Sure. Thanks for that. So yeah, as I was saying, for this we can actually load any names. So right in Bloomberg, how we can actually search and load equity ticker. So for this case, we can use examples such as Apple. So Apple is one of the world's most recognized companies. So you can see when we type Apple INC, so INC for incorporated, this is actually how we can leverage our natural language processing. So for Bloomberg, we also have integrated NLP, natural language processing, into our search bar. So just like how you would search on Google, you can really type Apple followed by INC or just simply Apple. And you can see we can have several results that populates based on the search term Apple. And the first one would be what you're looking for. So Apple US. So if you click onto that, this name, AAPLUS, this is actually what we call equity ticker. So think of equity tickers as names to identify the company that you're actually looking for on our terminal. So this works very differently for different tickers across the world as well. So if you search for a simple term like Bank of Indonesia, so you can see we have Bank Mandiri, Bank Indonesia, and these are what we have as the tickers for each of these banks. Bank Negara, Bank Rakyat. So it's an easy way for you to remember. And once you search for this, just click into that and you will be able to load up the page. So let's say you wanted to get more description of what this is. You can always type DES. So a simple way to remember DES is actually description. So you can see DES is the start of description, and you can run DES and you'll be able to see more details on that. PT Bank Negara Indonesia is a state-owned bank, so on and so forth. So if you change the ticker at the top, it will be the description for Apple. So it's very intuitive, very easy for you to remember how we can actually locate the tickers on that end. And so let's say if you see 183 on, this is what we call the command line. So 183, you can always hover your mouse over and you can see this is actually referring to the last price of Apple US. And how do we know if this is available on a historical basis? So let's say I wanted to know the last price of Apple in the last month or even the last year. How can I do that? So we can always go to what we call historical price. So if you don't remember the function, you can type historical price and you can see we have under functions, HP. So HP, once you click into that, you can see, there we go. We actually have loaded the historical prices of Apple over the time period that you have selected here. So this is a calendar. You can click on it. It's a drop down. You can really change the period. So maybe 28 October last year until now. So once you press enter, you can see that all the prices are actually populated on a day-to-day basis because you selected daily here. And if you change this to weekly, you will have a weekly basis. So this is very useful for you. Let's say if you really want to download these prices to Excel. Maybe you just want to monitor every Friday, what is the price of Apple when the market closes. So this is a good way for you to really get a sense of all the weekly prices very quickly. And you can always export. So you can see that once I hover my mouse, you can export this data to Excel. And once you press the export button, it will be exported to Excel for you to do further manipulation. Yeah. So I hope this is clear. Just take a pause here if there's any questions on what we just went through, how to search for equity ticker, as well as how to search for basic information like on the DES page, as well as historical price HP. Yeah, I will take a pause here. Any questions, you can just type in the chat or just feel free to unmute yourself and just, yeah. Right, so seems like there's no questions. So thanks everyone. So let me just proceed to the next step. So this is actually after we see when we have all this data in table form. So some of you might be interested how to see this in a visual manner. So because most of our users, some of them are what we call visual learners. So of course, having a chart, it will be very great to really see how the prices have changed over time. So we have this function called GP. So GP is our line chart function. So if you load line chart, you can very quickly see that we have plotted out the last price, which was what we saw in the table form. But we have now plotted out last price in a graph format. And this is a better way to really see the entire pricing history of Apple. So you can see the ups and downs. So it's very easy to visualize this, just like what you see on the news. And it will really give users a very quick way to tell, oh, when has Apple reached the lowest point in terms of the price? So you can even hover over, and you can see this was actually in May. Apple was actually only 124. So right now it's all the way at 182, in fact. So just a few days ago, it was at a high of 196. So it's a very easy way for you to really get started on how to visualize different data points. So instead of pricing, you can even do, let's say, the PE ratio. So for PE ratio, this is what we call a price earnings ratio. It's often a metric that our users in the financial world that they use to measure the price as a ratio of the earnings that they declare. So every quarterly, you would see US companies declare their earnings, and this is when they actually share their earnings throughout this earnings call, where analysts dial in throughout the world to understand what is the growth plans for this company and how are they in terms of financial standing. And PE ratio will be one of the metrics that we can use. And you can see if we plot out PE ratio, the highest PE actually went up to 30 and it was lowest at 20. So that's a very quick way. So let's say if you want to see what are some of the key events, we can do that as well. So if you click on this button, the key events, and you can type news. So let's say market moving news. So you can see for this, let me just press edit chart. Right. So you can start to see that within the chart itself, there are all these icons starting with H. So if I zoom in for you, you can see right here, if I click into this, it will bring you to the news very quickly. So this is one of the ways to really see what are the news that are actually impacted the drop for Apple during that period. So it appears that Apple's biggest drop was due to actually the iPhone maker underperforming. So for most internet and technology stocks during that time, so in May, it was actually poor in terms of comparison when Apple is actually being compared against the bigger peer group. So maybe think of them like your Microsoft, your Google, your Samsung. So we can always check that later. So I will teach you guys how to actually locate the peers of Apple on our terminal as well. So these are some of the simple studies that we can actually do to really get a sense of how news can impact Apple, and also to see how this information can be charted out in the graph format. So any questions so far on graph or even the news that we have?
Any question?
Any question?
Don't worry to ask a question.
Yeah. I mean, don't be shy if you have any pressing questions on, let's say, these charts, or how can we further tweak that. I'll be happy to show you, because for this, we can really do a lot of things. So if you see, let me just give you an example. If I don't want this white line, I prefer maybe to have it in pink. I can do that as well. So instead of that, we can always click edit, and we can change the color of the line to pink, or even any color that you actually prefer. So this is a very quick way to visualize what you want on the chat itself. And for this, you can see, let's say if you type current market cap, we can also add new fields into our graph. So current market cap, you can see two different lines. The pink line is the price, and the white line is the current market cap. So Apple is one of the most valued companies. So it's there was a time where it actually picked 3 trillion. So $3 trillion. That's actually 3,000 billion USD. So it's the most valued company in the world. And we can see right now it has taken a dip. So it's currently at 2.84 trillion. So there's really a lot of ways we can customize these charts. And if this is of interest, you can have a play around with it. So you can see we can change it to candles as well. If for those that are into trading, you like to look at candlesticks, we can have it in candlestick form as well. So you can see the highs and lows, or even change it to a dual color. So if you edit display, use up and down color, update. You can see this is very intuitive. We have very quickly updated to the green and red in terms of the different colors for the candle chart. So depending on your needs, you can even use this for technical analysis as well. So yeah, so I guess we are done with on charts and also navigation on equity. So I think the next step, natural question is to really ask, how can you get financials of any company that are listed? So we have this function called FA. So FA is our financial analysis tool. So this tool is actually very useful because we have aggregated all the information that is reported by the company to the stock exchange. So all these companies' figures, they are actually from your balance sheet. So for those that are not aware, balance sheet is actually part of your annual report, and you will be able to really see how the company actually report on a yearly basis, what is their performance, what assets, what liabilities they hold, as well as what are some of the cash flow statements, how they generate cash from their operating activities, how they invest this cash, as well as how they actually use the cash from all these financing activities to repay the debt or even to buy back equity. So has a strong signal that they are very vested in the company to increase shareholders' confidence as well. So these are some of the reported figures, and you can see the maximum period, if anyone want to make a guess, is actually 40. So we can go back 40 years on FA, and you can scroll, and you can see 1987. So this is a very fast way for you to really get all the financial data of a company going back to its entire history up to a 40 years limit without you having to go through the website to download every one of these financial reports and trying to do your own sum in Excel. So it will save you a lot of time And in terms of that, I think you can really benefit from our Bloomberg FA function, because we have also standardized these values for you so that you can actually compare, have apples to apples comparison. So let's say if you're valuing an Indonesian company versus a US company, you can use our adjusted figures on FA to compare this Indonesian company with Apple, because the terms that they use, we have actually standardized for you as well. And you can also simply change this currency to, let's say, this is Indian rupee, so I will use maybe Japan yen. So you can change Apple's financial into Japanese yen if you want to compare against, let's say, a Japanese sticker. Yeah, so we can do a lot of variation on this. And yes, we can also change the period. So let's say you want to change to quarter, you can always change to a quarterly period. If not, annuals will be the default that you have here. And of course, you can export to PDF, Excel, or our template. So yeah, so that's basically our FA function. So I will take a pause here because I know this might be a lot to digest for those that are not in accounting or finance. So personally, I come from an accounting finance background. So this might be just a revision for those that are in this field. But so far, if there's any questions from the crowd, please feel free to just share with us, and I can just take some questions to help address your concerns. Yeah. I'll just take a minute here.
If there is no question, perhaps you can continue.
Sure. Yeah. Okay. Sure. Yes. Okay. So where was I? So let me see the next part. So as we went through several functions that we covered earlier, so now you will get a sense how to actually create a graph, also identify tickers on our platform, and also using them to get the description as well as historical pricing. And with FA, we can really have access to all the 3 different statements. And the next step is we might be interested to look for what are some of the events coming out for, let's say, this ticker Apple. So we have this function called events calendar, so EVTS. If you load EVTS, we can see, just give it a moment to load. It's taking some time. Right. Yes, so you can see what I just did here for EVTS was to load the ticker at the top left. So this will allow you to really check for the upcoming events for Apple. And you can see this next 7 days, Apple does have a dividend ex-date actually in just 4 days time. So we can also check different type of events. So why do people actually do this? So let's say they check the maybe next 30 days. So as an analyst, let's say you are working in a sell-side bank, you'll be very interested to know about all these different events such as your earnings release, sales result, or dividends, to better understand what is the actual performance of Apple for this current quarter. And this is when you can actually use this date to make sure that you can see there's this calendar button. So if you click this will actually add an event to your calendar on your Microsoft. So syncing this to your Outlook, this will alert you to inform you that, hey, Apple is actually having a dividend ex-date on this day. So you might want to actually dial in to see what are some of the actions on that day. So let's say if they have an earnings call, there's a transcript, you can dial in, given that you are a vested shareholder or you are an analyst covering Apple, and you can really get up-to-date information live, of course in US time. So you have to adjust for the time differences, and you can really get information that's ahead of the market when Apple is actually reporting their dividends. So for that, You can also apply this to any other ticker. It doesn't have to be Apple. So you can Bank of America. You can see it has all different dates. And this is a very quick way for you to sync your Outlook to get this even on Excel. Let's say you just want Excel to keep track of all the different dates. You can keep on entering new tickers. Like, so let's go Alibaba. And if it's not occurring within next 30 days, it won't show up here. So it's very easy to use, very easy to understand as well. Yeah. So once you get a sense of this, with all this information, what are some of the tools that we can actually leverage on to maybe compare the performance of all these companies? So let's say using the example of Apple, just now I was actually sharing with everyone on how we can use the peers of Apple to assess the performance. So we can always go with this function called EQRV. So EQRV is what we call the equity relative valuation. Once you load Apple and followed by EQRV and press enter, you will see this page, and you can see this is actually getting all the competitors of Apple across the world. So you can see not just US companies, but also your Samsung, which everyone will be very familiar, your LG Electronics, your Xiaomi, and your ZTE. So they also do modem. And you can see these are actually a mix of companies in the US, China, as well as Hong Kong and South Korea. So with this, you can really get a sense of what is Apple performance compared to its competitors in the space. And you can see Apple happens to be one of the largest companies, 2.85 trillion, and the rest are just really way smaller compared to Apple market cap. So this is a very interesting way for you to really get a sense how big your current company is compared to its competitors in the same space. So you can also adjust this competitor source. So let's say you don't like these companies. How do you actually go about editing them? So you can click on adjust, and you can say, let's say, maybe this is missing Nokia. So I think Nokia is also a very strong competitor in my own thesis. I can add Nokia, and there we go. We have added Nokia to the list. And once we press back, we can save this first. And just give it some time. And you should see Nokia here. So it's a quick way for you to really customize this list, and you can really get any number of competitors, what you think is the best fit for your thesis, your analysis. So let's say if you are currently doing a final year project, you need to submit this as part of your assignment, and you are asked to actually maybe measure the performance of a ticker against just maybe 3 specific tickers that your professors have shared with you. So you can also do this very easily by customizing that. Click on the pencil icon and just deleting whichever you don't want and just adding in the ones that you want. So then you will have your custom peer group. So that is one of the really the beauty in Bloomberg, where we can allow you to customize this further. And you can see how this actually compares against different metrics like your PE ratio, which we went through, as well as your EV/EBITDA, your price to book ratio. So I wouldn't go into detail for all these different metrics, but just know that these are some of the key metrics that our analysts use to compare the performance of tickers such as in this space. So next up, you'll be interested, is there a way to really see maybe what's the returns? Because I'm not sure some of you might be also investing in the stock market, either in locally or on the US stock exchange. So this might be something of interest to you. Let's say want to see what's the price return of Apple over the last 1 year. So we have this function called TRA. So TRA is our total return analysis. So you can go TRA, and you can see this is a very quick way, similar to what we see on GP, which is our graph function. But the thing is, you can see the returns now. So how do we actually read this function? The buy date is when you actually buy Apple. So assuming last year, sometime this year, so 5th of August last year, if you bought Apple at 165, that is actually the price as of that day. If you sell it on the 4th, so the 4th is just last Friday because US market hasn't opened. So it will be the 4th, which is the last trading day for US market. I will actually have bought 1,000 shares of Apple on this day. And you can see after factoring the dividends, I will have a 10.56% return if I hold Apple just for 1 year. So that's actually a lot better than maybe your fixed income instruments, maybe paying you just 4 to 6%. And of course, equity, you are taking on much higher risk. And there's a downside to it. It's not always green. And you can see, let's say if I adjust this to just the start of COVID, it's in 2020, when COVID just happened, and everyone was in a panic mode. The stock market is actually tanked. We can see if we bought Apple back then, that was before the share split. So this is correct because Apple actually had a adjusted price after. So there was a share split. How do you know? So you can click on this and you can see it was a 4-for-1. So for every one share that you own, Apple splits it into 4. That's why there was a split thereafter. So the pricing went to about 110. And if you held Apple just 3 years ago until now, you would have made a 68% return on your money. So for every $100 you put in, you would have gained $68 extra. So that's a really amazing return, considering that you held a blue chip stock for 3 years, but of course you have to ride through the waves, the ups and downs. So if that's something that you can actually stomach the risk that you actually are exposed to in the equity market, then this is potentially the returns that you can actually achieve and realize after holding for 3 years, let's say 3 years. So not sure if everyone is also into, let's say, indexes. So for SPX index, so let me see SPX index. So this is the main index in the US. So if you look at TRA, so SPX index actually consists of 500 different members of the US composite. So it has the top members, your names like Microsoft, Google, Apple, so on and so forth. So let's say if you hold this for just 10 years, you can see what is the type of returns that it actually gets you. 191%. So for every dollar you put in, you get back 191% return. So this is what the market does for you in the long run because you are very diversified. And if I can convince you further, this is really one of the good ways to diversify your risk to the stock market because the chances are if you're going with stock picking, just choosing the winners, it's very difficult. You might also end up with companies like that does not do as well as you would have thought. So let me give you an example. So Bed Bath and Beyond. So you can see this was actually, it went all the way down 96% in the red. So the prices went all the way down almost to zero. So it's 0.28 now. So it's not every day that you will really get to see all greens, but you can also diversify your portfolio to make sure that you're exposed to different stocks across different industry so that you will not purely have just tech stocks, and you maybe have diversified your holdings into technology, agriculture, or even the banks, so you can really get a mix in terms of what is the risk that you are getting exposed to. So with this, I think I wanted to leave the team some time to digest this as well before I go into the next and last bit of function of how we can actually search for news in terms of all this AI. So just wanted to take everyone attention on this AI stock. So NVIDIA, which is one of the world leading microchip, as well as a company that all gamers should know. So this NVIDIA, the competitor is always AMD, so the red and green can. So NVIDIA is basically the green can, and you can see what NVIDIA learning using what we have just learned, GP. You can see the share price went up just like a rocket. So it was just earlier this May, it was 142. Right now, it's 445. So if you help NVIDIA just for 1 year, it would have netted you 135% return. That's actually quite comparable because we just assessed SPX index for 10 years and the returns were just 198. This was just 1 year. So you can see there's really a lot of hype on AI. So how can we actually leverage on this to maybe understand what are some of the AI that's actually on demand? So artificial intelligence, we have this function called AID. So if you load AID, this is our automated intelligence on demand. So you can see for stock like NVIDIA that really focuses on your microchips, your graphic cards, as well as the AI space to power this industry. You can see using this function, we generate the most recent news to explain why the stocks have even increased further and what's actually going on. So all these are news that you can access. So you can see AMD competitors is going to invest 400 million in India to build the largest design center. And NVIDIA is also investing aggressively in AI research and development. So these are some of the ways we can really use to justify our thesis why certain stocks are actually going up on an uptrend and why certain stocks might be going down. So you can see it's a very quick way, AID, to tell you that this stock has advanced 135% in just 1 year. And comparing this to the peers, it actually don't pay any dividend. So there was short interest was equal to 0.8 days. So basically short interest means that how many people are actually betting on the stock share price to actually go down. So when you take a short interest in the stock, that means that you're betting that in the near term or in the longer term, the stock price will go down and you will actually profit from the price going down rather than the opposite, which is long. It means you buy a stock, you hold a stock, and you hope that it will go up. So that is actually long. And you can see recently, I think there's a lot of discussion on the ESG space. So for ESG, we also factor in what are some of the ESG metrics for NVIDIA, not just to consider their performance in AI, maybe on the news, because a lot of people are actually talking about NVIDIA, then the share price goes up. It doesn't work like that. So we can also have a Bloomberg ESG score, which measures on scale to 1 to 10, 0 to 10. So it's actually 6.11 and 97% ahead of its peers. So with that, it's a very strong conviction for you to say that NVIDIA compared to its peers, it's also doing quite well in the ESG space. It's not just a company that's out to make money, but it's also trying to really make some efforts in terms of helping out with the environmental, societal, as well as governance aspect of things. And you can see different agencies like MSCI, Sustainalytics, they also measure NVIDIA. So not just from Bloomberg, but you also get a sense what all these ESG providers, how they are measuring these companies. It will also give you a sense that this is a fair and unbiased assessment of the company. It's not just Bloomberg, but it's a consensus from different agencies as well. Yes, so this is what I wanted to share with everyone. So in case you're also interested in what are some of the AI companies, so you can use our NLP. So as I mentioned, you can type just news on AI company, press enter. So once you press enter, you can see we try to screen based on any terms that capture AI. So you see Palantir, C3.ai, so on and so forth. Cathy Woods as well. So Cathy Woods is one of the very prominent stock investor. So she manages her own portfolio. So if you have a Reddit account, I believe she's also very popular, trending on Reddit. And for Cathy Woods, she is really into AI stocks for ARK fund. So you see that she actually holds UiPath 28 million shares. And she does hold other AI related tickers like Trilo. Yeah, so these are some of the ways for you to really get sense of the industry. So not just AI, news on maybe agriculture industry. So once you search this, you can see all the different news on the agriculture space. And this is a quick way for you to get up-to-date information across the world. So let's say if you just want this in maybe China. Yeah, just type China and it will filter this news in the industry that you are searching just for China. So yeah, this is a quick way, and you can also change the language. So you can see the different language that we support, and you can change to the language. So let's say if you change to Chinese, this will be it. If you change to Malay, we will try to pick up Malay news, if any. And if no, it won't be here. So this is really due to whatever news media that publish this news in their local language. We will use web scraping tool to search the web for all this news and populate into Bloomberg. So that's really like a search engine for you rather than going to Google. Yeah. Yeah, so you can see Malay news. After I've cancelled some of the filters, you can see all this news in Bahasa Melayu. And this would be a really quick way for you to get access to all these different news information that we have on the portal as well. Yeah, so the last part is that I wanted to share with the team before we go for Q&A and just let the team have a sense of what we actually have covered today. We can go to our DSRES page. So this is our document search page where we can actually locate any documents or research for your ticker of interest. So let's say for Apple, we can load this on DSRES and we can see these are actually reports provided by your sell-side banks, like your JP Morgan, Deutsche Bank, and even Bloomberg Intelligence. So just to give everyone a feel of what Bloomberg Intelligence is, if you can go to Help BI. So Bloomberg Intelligence is actually our expert team in Bloomberg. They are analysts covering a particular sector, and they can provide research on all these companies, industries, and provide expert opinion on why certain industries are going certain ways and why certain companies are behaving as such in terms of, let's say, their performance. So it's very useful if you go to, let's say BI, you want to go to BI banks. So you can see we have a BI banking page. If you click into this for me, you can see that very quickly, the BI banking page is what we have here. And if you click into market share, just give it a moment. You can see we have actually gotten all the different banks across United States. So because this is United States, so we can do Asia Pacific as well. We press enter. So it's quite comprehensive in the sense you will capture all of the data where possible. So we see Indonesia here. So you can see this is the GDP growth performance year on year. So Q1 compared to 2022 Q1, it was actually 5%. So this can actually tell you the banking industry in Indonesia has been doing well. It's on the upside, 5%. And maybe looking at a country like Taiwan, not so well. It's down 2.9%. So this is a quick way for you to really get a sense of the macro picture of the drivers within that space. And you can see we have other metrics like your debt as a percentage of GDP, your unemployment rate. So unemployment rate is one of the very useful metric to measure to get a sentiment of what is actually happening in the industry. So if your unemployment rates are all-time high, policymakers will definitely have to step in to introduce new policies to tackle these issues. And otherwise, it will become a societal as well as governance issue at the end. So you can see all these are actually sourced from the various ministries, central banks, as well as surveyed by even World Bank, IMF. So these are also information for your consumption. So in case you are doing some maybe macro research, you can use our Bloomberg Intelligence dashboard to really get these macro drivers. And within your report, you can strongly justify, maybe for the case of Indonesia, we are going to revise our forecast downwards for GDP. Why is that so? Explain with a few drivers. The economy is actually not doing well due to this and that, maybe the unemployment, maybe the debt is rising as a whole. So all these are ways for you to really get your research. And you can see for the news and research, in particular for banking, you can always click on the tab news/research. So you can see all these news are available for your consumption as well. So these are headline news. So you can see events. If you click events, these are some of the events that are happening within the banking space. So it's very curated depending on the type of dashboard you're going through or the function that you're going through. Yeah. So I guess we have covered most of these contents in terms of understanding how the equity world works. And of course, today we have went through how to actually search for equity tickers to understand what is the performance, as well as to get financial data, maybe to export to Excel to really manipulate these figures and to adjust these figures for your own consumption, be it for your own stock analysis, as well as maybe even for submission to your final year project. So you are using some of this information to derive your underlying thesis. So, and also we have went through how we can actually search for these corporate actions like your earnings call, annual general meeting, to better understand what is the timeline of all these events for each of these companies. And also we went through how to search underlying data on FA, which is a very powerful tool to really source for all this information without having to go through each of these companies' website and to download the year-by-year report. So that saves you a lot of time. It's tremendous amount of time, and you can really benefit from this time savings and dedicate this time to really doing the things that really matter to you, rather than spending your time to download all these statements and trying to reconcile them yourself. And the last part is we actually went through Bloomberg Intelligence, which is our BI function, curated analyst comments, as well as analysis on particular industry, and it's available for your consumption as well. Yeah, so that will be all from me. Thanks to the team for your patience as well as your attention here. So I'll just leave some time, maybe 10 minutes or so for Q&A. If you don't have any Q&A, any questions, you can also, if you feel shy to actually address them in the call, you can always feel free to reach out to me via email, or maybe just type in the chat as well. I will take a look and I will answer it to the best of my ability. Yeah. Thanks.
Okay. For the audience, any question? Well, in the chat, there is a question from Septian and Deandra. In the screen, there is more than one moving average, such as MA 0.5, 0.100, and 0.150. So how do we choose the best MA to predict the price using Bloomberg Terminal? Oh, is Bloomberg Terminal give a suggestion?
Sure. So thanks for the question. So it is a very valid one. Let me just share with you on this end. So if we go to Apple US, so we have this page called study. So study is our technical analysis study page. So you can see for our TA page, there's a lot of our standard studies that are very popular with the users, especially within this space. So for moving averages, we can always see we have what we call the EMA. So for our exponential moving average, if you click into this link in blue, GPO EXPMA, just give it a while. There we go. So we can see very quickly it has mapped out the 5 days exponential moving average for Apple. So if you want to do your own analysis, you can click annotate. So let's say you want to draw a trend line as well. Sorry, it's not loading. I think we can't do this here, but what you can see here is you can click on this icon and it should bring you a pop-up. It's outside of the screen currently, so I can't click on that. And you can really draw lines. So imagine you draw 2 lines. So you wanted to measure what is exponential moving average according to your own TA analysis. So to answer your question, there's actually no best way to really see what is the best MA. It's really defined by what time frame you are looking at. So by default, I believe we are looking at the 20, 50, as well as, let's go with edit chart, 50, 100 and 200. So some users, they actually do a short time frame as well. So they can change this to 20. And you can see these lines actually change. So the general guideline is that when the moving averages for the shorter term, so let's say the 20 crosses the moving average for 50, then that's actually a signal for you to really look at, because the trend has actually changed. So think of it, shorter term has actually exceeded longer term average. So which means that it's on a positive uptrend, and you can really use that as maybe one of the indication based on your TA analysis, because TA is very subjective. It depends on the individual that's using it, whether you want to go with 20, 30, 50, 100, or even 200. So if you believe this is a system that works for you, you can always tweak this to the period that you're looking at to get your own analysis done. Yeah, so I hope that helps.
Okay. Any question again from the audience? Well, don't be afraid to ask. If you know, I have a question.
Yes, of course, thanks.
Well, where is the note? Okay, so could Bloomberg provide menu that can make index automatically based on sector? Take for example, well, I want to make a index. Take for example, I want to index. I want to make an index for manufacturer firms in Indonesia, and I want to know the historical index, historical trend of the index. Since Indonesia does not provide index that contain only manufacturer, could we do that? Could we conduct that? Okay.
Sure, thanks for the question. So as a recap for those that might have missed the question, so basically I got a question regarding index creation. So how do we get manufacturing companies listed in Indonesia into this index, and how can we create them? So we have this function called EQS. So I'm mindful of time, but I'll try my best to go through this. And for this, we can search Indonesia. So what EQS does for you is our equity screening tool. So first, we want to screen for all the companies in Indonesia. So if you do that,
sir, could you share screen?
Oh, right. Sure.
Yeah.
Let me share my screen. Thanks. Yeah, I think you should be seeing my screen now. Okay, great. So as I was saying, we can go to EQS. So EQS is our equity screening tool. So with equity screening, this will allow you to really help you with your top-down analysis. So by top-down, what I meant is you can go from the entire universe, all the companies in Indonesia, then we filter in down the list to get only manufacturers. So you can see what I did here was to use our NLP, natural language processing, type Indonesia, click on the exchange. So we have 932 companies that are listed in Indonesia. So as a next step, how do we find companies in a particular sector? You can type manufacturing. Yeah, there we go. We have manufacturing sector as well. Click on this. So what this does for you is that you will filter down 933 companies in Indonesia. We only have 4 listed companies in the manufacturing space. So let's see what these 4 companies are. Might be familiar with you guys. So yeah, so we have Dharma Satya, Mitra, PT Steel Pipe, and Sri Rejaki. Yeah, so these are the 4 companies that we have here, and it's filtered by market cap. So how do you create, let's say, a custom index with these 4 tickers? So if you're very familiar with these 4 tickers, we can go to CIX. So CIX is actually our custom ticker. So think of it now, you understand what ticker does for you. So AAPLQS is the ticker to find Apple. Likewise, we can create a ticker that has equal weightage of these 4 members. So let me show you what I mean. So we can create a custom ticker called a custom expression. So maybe this is, I call it Manufacturing Indonesia, MUID. So Manufacturing Index for Indo. Okay. So what I can do here is I can first get the names. So this is actually DSNGIJ equity plus MPMXIJ equity plus ISSPIJ equity. Okay, the last one. SRIL. Okay. SRIL J equity. So we can do this and divide it by 4. So you can see it does work, but it returns an error because it is actually not priced for this ticker. So we can't actually use this in the ticker. It will be smart enough to tell you there's no current price. So if we take this away and we divide it by 3, there we go. This is actually a custom index that we have just created with 3 of these members as the underlying. So it will be the price of these 3, just like this example, the price of this ticker plus this ticker divided by 3. So every day you can see what's the difference in the price as an average. So let's say you are measuring this against a manufacturing company. Creating a CIX would be very useful. You can always benchmark this as an index and measure this against any manufacturing company. So it's a very powerful tool for you to leverage, and you can do this for any other industry. So once you press create, I've named it Manu ID. So you see, it's completed. So let's see what it does. So Manu ID, it will take some time, but it will take up to 24 hours to load, but you should be able to see this chart in GP later. So this is a preview that is working. So if you, let's say you insert just now that ticker, it wouldn't actually give you a preview because there's no price. So if you do this, there's nothing here. So you know this formula is wrong. So you have to fix this. And bingo, there we work. Yeah. So I hope this helps. So this is how you can create a custom ticker for your own use. Yeah.
So after we make this index and create the name of the index Manu ID, we can we can show the trend of the index in the GP. Is that right? In the GP.
Correct. So you can see if I load CIX, this is the Manu ID, the one that I just created. It will take some time to appear before you can use in GP. So just give it some time. Once you can search Manu ID, if it starts to appear here, then you can use it in GP. So it takes up to a 24 hour. So it's a custom.
Time.
Correct.
Okay.
It takes time. Yes, that's right.
Okay, thank you. Thank you.
Sure, no problem at all.
Another question from the audience? Come on, don't be afraid. Oh, from Dae Jung Yun. Is there Bloomberg's strategy against ChatGPT? ChatGPT is not affecting to Bloomberg market share in the future? Well,
right. Okay, that's an interesting question. So let me share with you a page where we have, let me just share my screen. Just give me a moment. So on your question on ChatGPT, actually we have this called Bloomberg GPT. This is basically our version of the ChatGPT, but for more specifically, we have actually utilized our 40 years of financial data that we have actually provided to the industry for over the past 40 years. We use this as an application in terms of AI, machine learning, and NLP. So NLP, you have already seen how it works. We can just type such terms like news on Apple in the terminal and it will be working. Otherwise, we can see that we have 345 billion of public data set to create this learning. And compared to, let's say, other GPT, our performance in terms of the financial space. So let's say if today you try to ask ChatGPT, get me the PE ratio of Apple, help me understand what is PE ratio of Apple. It will try to give you an explanation based on its knowledge, but ChatGPT is always not up to date because it's slightly lagging. So for us, what we wanted to do for you as a Bloomberg user, you can benefit from this in the future is that you can leverage on our integrated NLP as well as our AI and machine learning to make it work better for you. So let's say when you search in future news on Apple, we would really try to curate based on really all the news that are relevant for Apple and not just the fruit Apple. It's really the Apple company. So it's smart enough to do that. And I think moving forward, that is one of the things that we have in space for all the users, including yourself. So you can benefit from that in terms of Bloomberg GPT. Now we will be in touch again once there's actually new updates on Bloomberg GPT, and we will be sharing this in news publication with the team. Yeah. So I hope this clarifies on what we are doing on the GPT end. Yeah, otherwise I'm mindful of time. I know it's 5 p.m. Here in Singapore. So thank you everyone for taking time to attend this session. And please feel free to reach out to myself, Bianca, or Brenda if you have any questions on what was actually covered today over the past 3 hours. So thanks everyone again for attending. Yeah, appreciate it.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Bradley. And thank you for the speakers for the opportunity. This available opportunity to learn of how analyze macroeconomics, fixed income, and equity using Bloomberg Terminal. We hope it motivate us to use big data such as Bloomberg Terminal to analyze financial and economics phenomenon. And thank you for the audience for the fruitful interactions. And this is the end of the discussion for today. So I will give back to this session to Septian and Diandra. Thank you very much.
Sure. Thank you.
Okay, wow.
Oh, what an insightful discussion we have here today. Thank you so much, Miss Bianca, Miss Brenda, and Mr. Bradley for the wonderful material you brought to us today. And also thank you in advance to Mr. Dennis for moderating this wonderful session. Please, please.
And